All right, welcome, 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 humans and gentle humans, to San Francisco's first ever Cliterary Salon. Our next writer is Meg Elison. Make some noise. This is, I guess when I wrote this, it was a new bio, and now it's sort of a traditional bio in the way that, like, tradition becomes ossified very quickly, and like you give the queen a party one time and she's like, this is nice, we'll do this every Thursday or you're dead. So yeah, just, you know, life lesson about that too. Meg Elison is older than sin, and her heart can grow no darker. She wants to basically do it with the abyss. Every midwinter, an ancient evil with flesh of oak and eyes of undead suns pleads her to bestride the world like a colossus, meting out pleasure and pain in defiance of desert as a fundamental refutation of God. Each year she's like, pass. And yet the day of her acceptance draws near, and there will be a wailing and a gnashing of teeth like the opening bars of a really serious death metal track. Meg Elison, everybody!
Good evening, everybody. The name of this story is The Gap. It was a very simple machine, and the man who invented it was neither a wizard nor a mad scientist. He was an average guy who wanted average things. But keeping your desires small does not mean that they'll be satisfied. Danny's friends made fun of him for even looking at personal ads on Craigslist. This was written when there were still personal ads on Craigslist. This is how you get herpes, dude. Why don't you go on Tinder like a normal person? Like nobody ever got herpes on Tinder. I just like to read what people say about themselves rather than looking at thousands of pictures of girls. There's no romance to it. Alex sighed. If people use a dating site where you don't show your face first thing, there's a reason. Danny considered that. He considered saying that he didn't feel at all attractive himself, and that there was a lot of pressure on him to feel like someone liked him already before he showed his face. Wasn't it better to let attraction develop and then feel it, than to feel it fast and hot at first, only to have it fade as you came to like someone less and less? But men do not say these things to each other. What he said was, I just figured it might be easier getting laid this way. Alec had agreed with him and wished him good luck. Danny had made a date that very night with a woman whose personal ad had intrigued him. It read, I'm interested in addressing the orgasm gap. I'm very forward, sexually dominant, and I'm looking to redress the historical imbalance in our species' sexual expression. If you're more interested in bringing someone to orgasm than you are in having one yourself before falling asleep, email me. Make your subject line, The Gap. Danny had written a careful response. Dear Mistress, I admire the forthrightness with which you describe what you want. I am interested in the same things, though I did not realize it was an historic problem. Can we discuss it over dinner? They made the arrangements. Danny proved that he could follow instructions, that he would not respond to a request for pictures with one of his genitals. She picked the place and the time. She even told him what to wear. He expected that she would be average looking, but that was all right. As we've discussed, he was a man of average tastes. She texted him the exact location of her table, and he met her there, trying to hide his amazement at how lovely she was. He had cleaned himself up. He was freshly shaven and had gotten his hair cut. He wore black on black as instructed and had sprung for a brand new dress shirt. Danny thought the dress shirts lost all their crisp, stylish effect after about 10 washes. Better to buy cheap ones on a regular basis than deal with them looking faded and shapeless year after year. He'd paid a shoe shine in the subway platform to spiff him up. He looked as good as an average guy could look. His mistress was a darkly luminous person, as smooth and curvaceous as a piece of volcanic rock under museum lights. Her hair was long and lustrous, and her skin glowed like an ember. She wore no jewelry, only a black satin gown that made it clear that the jewels were concealed within. She rose to greet him, and he knew at once that she was not being polite. She wanted him to see. He put out his hand and she took his, only to pull him close and lay her cheek against his and say, "You'll do." Danny was thinking to himself that women always judged him that quickly, but they rarely made the decision out loud. They ate raw fish and drank sweet rice wine. Her mouth was quick and precise, and nothing took the red off her lips. He watched her face like a homeowner watches a brush fire as it crests over the hillside. When the bill came, she paid it smoothly without even looking at him. "So, are you in? Or are you out?" Her lips were smiling because she already knew what he would say. He nodded. He followed her to her place in his car. It was exactly as she had said. His job was to address the gap. She told him exactly what to do and how to do it. She was patient with him, but something less than kind. Not clinical, exactly. More like a banker. Pleasant and friendly, but never taking her eyes off the count. They were at it for hours. He slowly mapped the territory. She liked the side of his tongue rather than the point, applied just below or to the left of her clitoral hood. She'd gasp if he went straight at the head, but would also throw off her next orgasm. If he followed her verbal and nonverbal cues, she would come about every 2 minutes. She liked the pads of his fingers, but not the tips. His thumb could never do the job. He swapped his middle for pointer for ring, like a savvy coach bringing in a new pitcher when the old one was showing fatigue. The scoreboard on his side never changed. That isn't to say he didn't fuck her in the usual way. He did. She put the condom on herself with an efficiency that reminded him of those soothing YouTube videos where the big factory machines pump out marshmallow peeps over in perfect uniform rows. He applied himself carefully, admirably. He didn't bang and he didn't saw. He used his cock like the bass note in a song, helping to keep the high notes from sounding shrill, carrying the rhythm through the melody and back again. "You do not get to come," she reminded him, still gasping from the aftermath of triple digits. "Don't you dare disobey me. Your debt is not yet paid." He pulled his cock out of her and rubbed his latex-coated head against her clit in broad X's until she came again, and then slid back into her to feel the way she squeezed in rhythm with her sobs. He did not disobey her. The truth was that Danny could not have disobeyed her if he tried. Danny, like so many other men, had developed unhealthy masturbatory habits. He had been using what his other friends told him was called the death grip for 15 years or more. He could last long enough to satisfy a partner, but he could not come to orgasm while in the grip of any welcoming orifice. He could come only in his own clenched and maddened hand. Other women had taken this personally, as a failure of their allure or their anatomy. Danny, ashamed of himself but unable to say so, did not tell them why he couldn't come. He accepted their enthusiastic blowjobs and their spirited cowgirling, and then finished the way he always did, alone. It would have been easy to fix this problem. Danny had read on the internet about other guys who suffered this way, how they went cold turkey for a while and then set about the business of retraining themselves. He could have done that too. One guy even made up a shopping list of lubes and the right kind of sleeve to adjust the feeling of being inside someone. Danny did not try it. He became, instead, obsessed with the concept of multiple orgasms. He stayed up all night sometimes, reading the painstaking blogs of guys who could come twice, maybe 3 times in a night. Their agony and their ecstasy. Their tantra and their theories about chi, kundalini, yang essence. Danny watched his mistress now. She hardly seemed tired at all. If she was wearing makeup, it had not run. She glowed brighter still, not seeming to sweat, but only to steam the room around her like a jungle plant. She was naked and helpless, spread out before him, and completely in control. He hated her without knowing that's what he was feeling. He didn't have the bridge inside him that brought things out of his heart and into his mouth. So many don't. He just had a river that flowed between, mixing things up and churning it all toward the sea of his mind. The sea he thought was salty and full of logical creatures, rather than the betentacled de novo strangers of the deep. Now, the machine. Danny was a man who knew machines and had made them all his life. The logical sea of his salty brain understood machines better than anything else. It was just like a phone, taking packets of information from one side and sending them to the other with almost no lag. It was like a TENS unit, moving muscles without any help from the central nervous system. It was like magic, somehow, but any machine that's good enough seems to be. He was not a magician. He was not mad. He was just an average man who wanted something that he couldn't have. He was afraid to try it on his mistress. She was so sure of herself, and he knew it would make her angry. But there was nobody else. He didn't want to have to start over with another woman and maybe end up with one who wasn't as good at it. "You know what I want you to do," she said, sliding out of her red robe and lying on her bed. "You know what you owe me." He did, and he brought her face down into her heat to start paying his bill. The machine was in his pocket. It didn't even beep. She blinked, her contorted face smoothing out in confusion. "I was so close," she breathed. "That was weird." He pressed his face into her thighs. It washed over him. It wasn't like one of his. It didn't leave him feeling like death was only an arm's length away. It rushed through him like gold flake and champagne in his veins, bringing heat into his extremities and making him rampant for more. For more! "Let's try again," he told her. He flipped her over onto her knees with her hands on her headboard. He worked her clit with his baseball team of fingers, his other hand pawing at her nipples exactly as she had instructed him to do. He felt it gathering in her, that electric, rising feeling that means a storm is about to break. He brought her to the edge, feeling her whole body tense and prepare for the long, glorious fall. And then there it was again. He had to bite his cheek to keep it from making him scream. His abs fired and his body curled involuntarily. He saw stars, and his hands clutched at her too hard. "Just?" She looked over her shoulder, suspicious, and then down at his phallus. He was dry. He wasn't even hard. It had happened, but it had happened somewhere else. There was no evidence. "No, mistress." The suspicion would not leave her face, but she was determined. She had him try everything. She rode his cock and inspected the reservoir tip of the condom, dumbfounded to find it empty and feel herself as yet unpaid. She brought out every toy she owned, turned the dials up to max, and used them in combination with one another. She paddled him and whispered filth in his ears. She pushed her own taboos in his, but nothing came, and neither did she. Danny was drowning. He was lost to an ecstasy so great it was almost a species of pain. He was powerless against it, and his simple machine was still in his pocket, in his pants, which she had thrown across the room. "Okay," she said, okay. "If this doesn't work, I'm going to the doctor tomorrow." She licked her lips and handed him 2 pieces of machinery. One had a hooked end that she helped him guide to lay exactly against her G-spot. The other was the classic Hitachi magic wand, rude in its hugeness and unapologetically ugly. She put them in position and told him what to do. He held on, shaking and unready. His mistress danced with her 2 robot lovers until he played the role of a coat rack. He could have been anyone or anything. This had nothing to do with him. It never had. He looked down at the grim determination on her face and saw that there was only the gap, the void. the column of debits that would never be filled. She wasn't here, and neither was he. He let go of the vibrator and the hook. He slid off the bed and reached for his pants. "You impatient asshole," she said through clenched teeth. She grabbed them both in her own hands and made the final adjustment that brought the orgasm that could not be denied. Danny wrapped his fingers around his simple machine, but a second too late. It hit him like a 747, dilating his pupils and popping his lungs like a couple of mylar balloons on an electrical wire. His heart exploded in his body, and he dropped to the floor like more discarded clothing. The machine snapped between his fingers. His mistress caught only the tail end of her due, but it was enough to restore order to her universe. She lay back, laughing with relief for a long time. When she got up to see where he'd gone, he was already cold. Thank you.
So that's a bad face.